Welcome to Off the Shelf, conversations with authors and illustrators. I'm Martha Kofod, and this is Nancy Halliday. She's our guest today, and she's actually an illustrator. Nancy, tell us a little bit about how you got started as an illustrator.
Well, I'm actually a scientific illustrator, and neither one of my parents went to college, so I wasn't aware of the opportunities available to me. My mother was a fashion illustrator and remained so until her death, really, in '96. But I knew I didn't want to be a commercial illustrator. But I always liked to draw, and I was always interested in nature. So when I finally got to college, I realized that one could major in the things one liked. One could actually major in science. I didn't know that. So I majored in zoology, although I started in a different major, but eventually switched to zoology. And then my professors, knowing I could draw, began to ask me to illustrate papers, some of their scientific papers. And that's how I got started in scientific illustration.
So then when you graduated college, you did what?
Well, I graduated from the University of Oklahoma, and I tried everywhere to find a job because I didn't quite know what I wanted to do, whether I wanted to be some kind of biologist or I didn't realize that there was actually a career available in scientific illustration. In fact, I don't think it even had a name at that point. I just knew I did a few illustrations for professors. I applied everywhere and nothing much happened, but someone suggested I go to the Smithsonian Institution. So I did try there, and sure enough, I did find a job illustrating. I was doing some work in the bird division. But then one of the artists in the exhibits department died very early, tragically, of a heart attack. And I had already put an application in for the exhibits department, and I was the next artist to be selected. So I worked in the exhibits department for, I think it was 4 years. I would have stayed forever, but it was a wonderful place to work.
Oh, it was a grand opportunity and
yes,
very distinguished.
Truly enjoyed it.
At the Smithsonian.
But there was what they call an RIF in the federal government, a reduction in force. Since I was the last one to join, I was the first one to go. So, from there, I went to Florida State Museum. Another person also was removed from the staff, a very talented exhibit designer, and he went down to Florida State Museum. And he wrote to me and said, "We need an artist down here." So I thought, well, how fine. So I went down there, and I worked for him briefly in the exhibits department there, but then a job opened up as scientific illustrator. And I stayed there for 8 years for the Florida State Museum.
Well, you had some fortunate connections. It's
yes, I did.
Devastating to lose the job and then have to search again. What did you do then following that?
Well, let me explain a little bit about scientific illustration and what it really is. Because most people don't understand. They know what science is. They know what illustration is, I think. But scientific illustration, they don't understand. It's doing drawings for scientists who are engaged in very specific research. And most of these are published in journals that the public never gets to read. In fact, I don't think you even have them here in the library. Let me show you some.
Please do.
For instance, if you or some of your visitors or viewers have been down to the Field Museum recently, there's an exhibit on horses down there. I was down there over the weekend, and one of the people being interviewed in a short TV program down there was a Bruce McFadden. And Bruce McFadden, Dr. McFadden, is a horse specialist, specializing in evolution of horses. And I worked for Bruce McFadden at the Florida State Museum. And I was quite surprised to see him, aged quite a bit since I knew him. But I illustrated several papers for him. For instance, here's one titled "The Miocene horse hipparion from North America and from the type locality in southern France. Published in the, reprinted from Paleontology, volume 23. Now this is a very specific work on horse teeth. And
On horse teeth?
Horse teeth, yes. And that was his specialty, studying horse teeth. And so I illustrated a number of horse teeth for him and did a number of these very specific drawings. These are fossils. And sometimes you only have a part of a fossil. So I had to stipple in or did put in dashed lines in places where the bone was broken away. And the teeth were sometimes difficult to illustrate too, because they were obscured partly by some of the material they were encased in. But these are very typical of the illustrations that scientific illustrators do.
Very detailed.
And there's very much so. And there's also a scale here to illustrate how large these things really are in life. But he was very interested in the pattern of wear on these teeth. And then later he became interested in the chemistry of the teeth, which he explained in this video down at the horse show.
How old were these teeth?
Let me think now. I'd have to look and see. I believe I'd have to look and see. Pliocene, which is the age before the Pleistocene. So these are mid-Pliocene horses. And then here's another one I illustrated also. This is in the bulletin of the Florida State Museum, Biological Sciences. These journals would be in museum libraries or in the libraries of universities. But other than that, the public doesn't get to see these. And here is
Scientists, though, are interested
strictly,
in it.
it's very, very scientific. In this case, he had me do more than the just the teeth. I did some illustrations of bones here as well. I'm trying to. This is a femur of a horse with the various parts explained down here in the legend, and again the usual scale to show how big it is. But this, as I say, this is highly specialized, and most of the work is in black and white, because these bulletins are in these journals are published by organizations. For instance, here's one, the Paleontological Association. They don't have, they're supported by their members. They don't have a great deal of money, and black and white is the cheapest way to reproduce these.
How long does it take you to do an illustration like that?
A very long time. It really does, because you have to measure, everything has to be measured. And you have to be very, very careful to get exactly right. So it's quite difficult to do this.
And it's a valuable skill to have.
Well, thank goodness for my zoology background, because I can converse with these people.
Sure.
And it's quite a thrill to feel that I'm contributing in some way to science. So
I should say. You also have been associated with Scott Forsman.
Well,
with
that
textbooks?
was after I moved here. My job at the Florida State Museum ended in 1984, and I moved here.
What brought you to Glenview?
Well, actually, I moved to Wilmette because my family is from this area. In fact, I should say that if you've been to the Morton Grove Historical Society or know the house on Dempster Street, that's in the Morton Grove Historical, that's my grandparents' home. So my background is all German. Mm-hmm. We had German immigrants from both sides of the family came here to this area. So we are founded in the Chicago area in the north side. And so when I lost my job at the Florida State Museum, I came here to look for a job, and ended up doing various freelance work and discovered a chance to get a master's degree at Northeastern Illinois University. So I was both doing freelance work and illustration work, which included something for Scott Forsman. It's a textbook, Discover Science, I believe. They produce a lot of school textbooks.
For what grade level do you recall?
It was middle grade. I can't remember the exact, but it was middle to late sixth, 7th grade, something like 5th grade, I believe.
And again, it's the scientific illustrations? It's not specifically animals? Or?
This is color, of course, because children respond to color.
Mm-hmm.
It was the chapter on environments and ecology, I believe. So I did a series of illustrations in color of, I'm trying to remember now, of how a pond gradually fills in with water and then becomes part of the forest so that you never knew a pond was there. Ecological changes.
Now, did Scott Forsman seek you out, or did you make yourself available?
Scott Forsman has a program whereby artists and illustrators can come to them. It's an open program, I believe, on a certain day of the month, where all the editors simply take the time off, and all the artists are invited to bring their portfolios, spread out the portfolios. And the editors look at them and think, oh, I could use this person for this next book I'm doing, or here's something I can use right now for this book. And so then if the artist's work fits in and the editors can use it, then the artist is contacted.
So you have an active portfolio that you're able to,
yes, that's right.
present. After the Scott Forsman, did you have another position?
Yes, after I got my master's degree here from Northeastern Illinois University in geography and environmental studies, which is just a continuation really of the zoology work I did earlier, I was employed by the Forest Preserve District of Cook County, and I was headquartered at River Trail Nature Center, which is in Northbrook. It's not too far from here at all.
No, it's
on Milwaukee Avenue, just north of the Grove.
I used to take my children there.
And I did, back to the exhibits, so I was doing work mainly for exhibits. Essentially, I was working for all of the nature centers in the Forest Preserve District. There are 5 of them. But the trouble is, being headquartered at one place, the others tended to forget about me, because Cook County is a large place, and there are several nature centers way in the south. I did some work for them, but after a few years, they tended to forget that I was here. So most of the work I did was for River Trail, and it's still there. I retired from there in 2003, but much of the work I did is still there, even though they've done an addition onto the building.
And again, this is illustrations of animals that they have there, or that they...
Mostly, well, when you're doing work for exhibits, as I did for the Smithsonian and as I did for the Forest Preserve District, what you're doing is explaining to the public things they can't ordinarily see. And the same thing, for instance, as Scott Forsman I was doing, to explain over time how a pond in a forest fills up. It might take a lifetime of a person, but you wouldn't see this. But in the illustration, you can see how it would happen, and you can see enough in the illustration to be able to go to where a pond was and tell from the illustration, oh, that's where a pond was, and that kind of thing. So I would explain a beaver. For instance, I did the illustration of a beaver. They have beavers living on the river right there, and of course beavers normally in a pond make their home in a big beaver mound, but this is a river, so they instead make their home digging into the bank, which is out of sight of humans. So I did a cutaway view of the beaver house deep into the bank, and how the beavers dive in. The entrance is underwater, and how they can come in and come up and then find food and drag it in underneath and
so that required quite a lot of research on your part.
Yes,
to
again, zoology background comes
how
in
this differs from a beaver dam, for instance.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. And the volume that you donated here to the library is Mammals of North America?
Yes, I have a copy right here. Mammals. It was 2 editions. The first edition came out in 2002, and then this edition came out just recently. Mammals of North America, and I was contracted, a friend of mine recommended me to the authors. I'm very grateful for that, and I was contracted to do the shrews, the moles, and the chipmunks, because I had done
very
chipmunks
specific.
in other places.
The rodents.
So not all there's a lot of rodents, and now you may think the chipmunks. There's only one chipmunk here, the eastern chipmunk, in this part of the country. But out west, there are many, many, many species of chipmunks. They may look alike to us, but the chipmunks know the difference. And I actually did 5 plates of chipmunks. There are that many chipmunks out there.
Do you work from photographs then, or from the live animal?
Well, I work from, first of all, the knowledge that I've gained over the years of observing animals and studying about them. But we, the artists, there's 7 of us who worked on this book. We're very fortunate in that the authors arranged a trip for all of us to go down to the Southwest Research Station, which is run by the American Museum of Natural History in southeast Arizona.
Oh, yes.
And it's very rich in mammal life down there, because on the mountains you have this gradation of vegetation from almost alpine all the way down to desert. So in every ecological zone you have a different group of mammals living. So we would get up, we would set the traps at night, and then in the morning we'd get up before dawn and get out and check, because the heat would kill the animals in the traps. So we'd have to get them before the sun struck the traps. And we caught all kinds of marvelous creatures, all kinds of little rodents and whatnot. And then the station gave us aquaria, glass cases to keep the animals. We put little the sand and little plants in
little
there.
Environmental.
And gave them food and water, and they settled right down, and we were able to sketch. And I just filled a whole sketchbook full of all kinds of creatures. Unfortunately, there's only one chipmunk there, one species of chipmunk there, but I sketched a lot of other creatures. Chipmunks.
Now this is in color.
Yes, this is a field guide in color. This is one example of the chipmunk plate that I did for them. In fact, this is the chipmunk that was there at that the cliff chipmunk. That's the one that occurred there. Yes. So, but all of these are different species of chipmunks.
So
that
this would
occur
be a
out west.
handbook that's used all over the United States and probably
Yes.
by a lot of naturalists.
Yeah, well, Canada as well. Yes, it's North America, so it includes both. And then the shrews I did as well. There are several species of shrews here. Here's one plate of the shrews that I did. Now you asked me about how else I got information. So I was able to take the sketches. Also caught a shrew there. So I was able to sketch these animals from life, and I've also sketched them in life in other places too. And then I went down to the Field Museum every day to do this work in color, because the Field Museum has what they call skins, scientific specimens, skins of these things. And
Not necessarily on exhibit. Are they?
No, they're in the back in the collections.
Okay.
Because they're not exhibitable in the sense that they're just simply scientific specimens. And the way they're prepared is that when the animal is killed, then it's just cut down the middle, and the skin is stripped off.
Sure.
And then it's stuffed with cotton or a body of straw that's made. All the material that can, the body material that can deteriorate is removed. So all that's left is just the skin. And then that's pulled around this body that's pre-made out of straw or it's cotton, and then sewed up, and the animal is just straight out. The feet are straight out front, the back feet are straight out back, and it doesn't look like much of anything. It certainly doesn't look like it's ever been alive, but it's got the color, and it's got the general shape, and it has the size. And that's important. So with my sketches of the live animals, and then the color and the size of the specimen, I was able to put these paintings together.
So these specimens are prepared specifically for people like illustrators or?
Well, for people doing research on, for instance, changes over time, changes over area. with global warming now, many species are moving north. And so biologists go out in the field to collect these and find them, may find them where they never found them before. Oh, this is a species of chipmunk that belongs down there. So it's in the museum, and then a researcher can go and find, oh, this one has extended its range. So and then the skulls, not the whole skeleton, but often just the skull is preserved. And then scientists can study the skull, because very often differences in teeth differentiate different mammals. So they're able to study the skulls as well.
You've had an interesting history.
Yes. Oh, let me also. I brought along with me the actual plate. It's been on exhibit, and that's why it's in a frame. This is the actual size that which I painted these chipmunks. So I did them large. I always do the work. What the scientific illustrator always does the work larger, so that when it's reduced, and it looks much better. It crispens up, shall we say, when it's published and reduced.
Do you complete your artwork on site, or do you take it home and complete it at home?
Well, certain things like the tree I could do at home, but the plants I could do those at home. But the mammals, the chipmunks and the shrews, I did it right down there at the Field Museum from those specimens. Yeah, I had to make sure I got the color just right, because color was so important. Differentiation on these chipmunks.
That's beautiful. Is that called a print then?
No, this is the actual original.
Oh, that's
the original. This is the actual size that they were done.
So you're allowed to keep your originals then?
This is
it does not become the property?
Yeah, this is a contract. I'm not on salary. When you're on salary, the work belongs to the organization that pays you. But if you're on contract, depends on the contract. Scott Forsman, for instance, kept my work. That was part of the contract. But in this case, the publisher said, you'll get your work back. So I'm able to get it back, and I can publish it again, provided it's not in any form that would interfere with sales of the book. So there are different kinds of contracts.
So you don't get any royalties on the sale of the book?
No, not at all. I just got a payment, and that was it. Yeah.
One thing in your resume, Nancy, you're a member of the Environmental Commission here in Glenview?
Yes, that's right.
Tell us a little bit about how you happen to do that and what your responsibilities are there.
Well, the Natural Resources Commission was set up, I don't even know the date when it first started. Ken Fuller was the chairman, the initial chairman, and stayed with us for many years. He retired just this past year as chairman. But as an environmentalist, I'm interested in conservation, of course. So I heard about the Natural Resources Commission, and I started to go just as an interested citizen. And so I attended pretty faithfully for a couple of years. And then when a person, it's a 5-person commission, when one of the commissioners stepped down, I was asked to fill the place. So I go and attend. I don't have the background in law. That's a lot of it has to do with regulations and law that I'm not very good at. My background was zoology, science, zoology, botany. So sometimes I feel I'm not contributing as much as some of the others, but at least I'm there.
I'm sure your contribution is valuable to them. We appreciate
I'd like to say one last thing. When I was at the Smithsonian, there were a number of different scientific illustrators in different departments. And the Smithsonian is a very, very big place. And we began to feel a need to contact one another. For instance, one person may have an expertise on something that another person may need. And so we began to get together to find out who we were, first of all, where we were, and then to have a little lunch group. And this grew into the Guild of Natural Science Illustrators, which is now international. And so I was a founding member of that organization. I'm very proud of that.
Oh,
I am the, and so we essentially, our group essentially made scientific illustration a term that most people now, that many people can come to know. Before, as I say, scientific illustration was not even named when I started out. But now it has become a topic of study in several colleges and universities, actually offering majors in scientific illustration. Mainly I think due to the Guild of Natural Science Illustrators. So I began teaching in 1977, and one of the reasons I wanted to get my master's degree so that I could continue to teach, and I do teach quite a bit at the Morton Arboretum, in the certificate program there, and at the Chicago Botanic Garden as well. So a number of scientific illustrators have become teachers, and we've graduated a number of students, and we're very proud of the fact that now scientific illustration at least is fairly well known among the in colleges and universities community.
Thank you, Nancy, for being with us. You've had such a distinguished career and made such a contribution to scientific illustrators and illustrations. Thank you again for being with us.
Well, thank you so much for the interview. I appreciate that very much.
And thank you for being with us on Off the Shelf, Conversations with Authors and Illustrators. I'm Martha Kofod.